Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, Mr. Seaman. Thank you for all your patience with me. I've been having a little trouble staying online this morning, which is a bit unusual.
Frank Zappa would enjoy. He was a technical crazy man.
Oh,
You know,
yes, definitely.
he loved the technical stuff. He was way ahead on every kind of fuzz box or anything that was came out. He was on top of it. I knew Moog, by the way. When I was doing commercials, the Moog synthesizer.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
It's pronounced Moog.
Right, right.
Yeah, Zappa got into some of his stuff. But I was working with Gershon Kingsley. When I was doing commercials, I would do. I was one of the early ones using synthesized music, to score my commercials.
Right.
And I used to work with Gershon Kingsley. I'd get on the mic and do monster sounds and creatures, and while I was there, Moog would come over and he'd sell him his new synthesizers. So I was into Frank's electronic side more. His goofy songs.
Now, what year are you talking about now with
I was
movies?
talking 60s.
Back in the 60s.
I had a TV commercial company doing animation. I did actually Sugar Bear for 16 years. Elton John sings about Sugar Bear. Yeah, Sugar Bear was one of my characters. Sold Sugar Crisp cereal. And I did Bullwinkle and Flintstones and Trix Rabbit and Honeycomb Kid. So my company, we had all the cereal commercials pinned down. We were the best cereal commercial animation company. And that's when I hired Frank to do the Luden's Cough Drop commercial.
And about what year did that come out?
That was also 67.
67.
I hired Frank, to score the Luden's Cough Drop commercial.
Now, he wasn't. Where did you become aware of Frank in 67?
He was playing at the Garrick Theater.
Oh.
He had a 6-month gig at the Garrick,
Right.
New York.
Okay.
He was living out on 12th Street in the Village. And so my daughter was into Zappa, and she said, "Oh, you got to hear this guy. He's really a freak." And I said, "Yeah." She says, "Yeah," and he's playing down in the Village. So I went down to see him, and I talked to him about, does he ever think of scoring TV commercials? Because I used to hire all the musicians to do all this crazy stuff, including Gershon Kingsley.
Right.
So he said, "Why not?" And I said, "Well, I have a commercial to do for Luden's Cough Drop, where I'm going to have this little abstract shape dance around on the screen. How would you like to score it?" He said, "Well, give me $2,000 and a studio for 8 hours." I never heard anybody say something like that, He said, I said, "Well, imagine he would do $2,000. You couldn't get him at any stage that you knew him at $2,000. I said, "That's fine. That's cheap for us." And he went into a studio, and he had one guy doing coughs, but he had just different instruments that he would play and news. Yeah, so that's how we got together. And I had my 16 millimeter Beaulieu, and I said, "I'd like to come down and do some experimental films, shooting you on the stage." And at the time, I had this guy, my cameraman Tom Mangraviti, and my partner Ray Favada, and we all went down and we shot that first night. And he loved the stuff and the way I was doing it. I was doing a lot of montage, what he used to call a montage a go-go. And I said, "Well, I'd like to keep filming you if you don't mind." He said, "Well, why not?" And that's where we just got together. And we got together doing he had to do a promo for, I think it was Hagstrom Guitars. Also, he was doing one for an underground merchandising in Chicago festival. And that's when we did that 3-minute opening with Frank that won the Cine Gold Eagle European Award. That 3-minute film we did, the first film we did together. And we edited together, and Frank put in all these black and white horror scenes and stuff. That's the 3-minute opening to my 42-minute film. But I kept shooting with him, and I said, "Well, let's work together." And he says, "Well, I have this film called Uncle Meat that I want to do." And I said, "Well, I'll keep filming, and we'll be partners." It was a handheld camera, and I didn't need a crew, and I didn't need sound. And I wasn't going to do a corny, the Doors version of a documentary where you sit and you talk about what you want to do. There's no talking. So he liked the idea I was going to shoot silent. I liked silent because I could shoot from 2 frames a second to 64 frames a second. And I could montage in the camera. In the Beaulieu with a 100-roll film, I could rewind the film and then run it again, accidental sync. So I would shoot sometimes double exposures and triple exposures of what they were doing. And what I would do is then I would bring the footage in when Frank was recording at the Apostolic down in the Village. They had the first 16-track studio. So he used to, he loved that as his studio. He was into 16 tracks. That was a big deal. So we just kept filming together. He loved what I was doing. And I had the pleasure of having him as a subject matter and sound without a story, and he loved that idea. And without voice, he was able to score the film. So for a guy who doesn't like being tied down, with any script or any specific thing, because he's strictly improvisation. And I was improvisational. So the point is, I would bring my dailies into his recording studio the next day, and he'd look at the stuff, and then we'd just play music to it. And at one point, he played the Fillmore East. He actually put up an hour's worth of film and recorded live in front of the audience. That was his show. And he had a way of signaling the guys in the band. You could talk to Bunk and those guys. And he would use hand signals. And they would know how to change rhythms and sounds and tones and what to do. So as he watched the film, he'd be doing hand signals. And they would be watching his hand signal. Incredible experience. It was like a happening, It's like, that's what he liked to do. He never played he never played a hit song, If he did 2 shows a night, it had to be a totally improv. But at the Garrick, I wish we had recorded more of the Garrick, because at the Garrick, he had a college audience that had never heard anybody say fuck on the stage, He was so shocking to them that they would love it. And what he would do is he'd punish them, for being groupies, and he would hire he'd hire boxes of vegetables and fruits, bottles of salsa and stuff. And he'd say, everybody want to come into the show, get up on the stage. And he would trample on them and smash them with fruit and vegetables and squirt them. And they loved being abused by him. YouTube is running a thing called Rehearsal, in which using the Beaulieu that could run 2 frames a second. So I was able to shoot as though you were fast cutting, but you're not cutting, there's no editing. And I would just keep shooting 2 frames a second. Wow. So you did thousands of pictures. And then I would rewind that, and then I'd have thousands of pictures cutting into thousands of pictures. And I played with that. So it's a thing called Rehearsal that also will be on YouTube. Another thing that I think they still have is Electric Circus. It was a psychedelic disco, and I put a piece of Zappa's music to it that makes it's like a 3-minute trip film. But again, I would run a 100-foot roll without ever editing. There's very little editing in any of my films with Zappa. It's just putting together selected accidental montages.
So you're the one responsible for all that madness.
Well, in a way, Frank, that's what he loved. That's why he could have had 1 million photographers. I was very proud that he loved what I was doing, and I'm very proud to say, because such a great genius like him saw in me something that he identified with, which to me is, there's no greater honor. Well, I get a lot of fans that still say they're dying to see the 14 hours. In other words, that's the problem right now. My 42 minutes is just my capsulization of the story I wanted to tell and a kind of an impression. But he allowed me to keep that for festival use. I'm shocked. Zappa would give me 1/4-inch tapes to use. But there are people who see my film, the one you have, never heard it before. It was never released, which means I had this large reel-to-reel quarter-inch tape. I can't believe Zappa, an egomaniac like Zappa, trusted me to put his music to my pictures.
You still got it?
No.
He took it back.
You know the story. I wound up selling him everything for $25,000.
Oh no, I didn't know that story.
Yeah. The story is that we kept shooting, and he could never shoot. My theory is, you talk about patience. An artist has no patience at all. So an artist's boredom ratio has nothing to do with normal people. So an artist is bored with something even while he's creating it. While I was shooting with Frank, experimenting, I guess the history goes back to I was doing dance films. I was part of Dance Theater Workshop in New York, doing experimental dance. Back when Twyla Tharp was still doing experimental stuff, and I shot with a lot of experimental dancers. And I was into multimedia dance. They would dance in front of films and films in front of dance and all kind of mixed media, stuff like that. And what happened was I was paying for all of this out of my TV commercial company. So when I folded in '69, I no longer could afford to contribute to doing dance films. And I had been shooting with Zappa for almost 2 years and still wanted to continue my film experimental career. But without the TV commercial company money, the dancers, I couldn't get grants for dance films because the dancers needed all that, that grant money. So I was stuck without a way of making films. So I figured out that what's going to be the next revolution after the rock revolution. And Frank actually would lead into it because he was pornographic musically and verbally before anybody was even into that, Just give me your dirty love, I needed another way aside from my cartoon, and talk about patience. Animation in the Disney realm that I was in, you have to draw thousands of drawings. It's not like computer animation.
Right.
And that takes more patience than anything. And I did that for like 40 years. I've been doing animation forever. Computer animation put me out of business. Anyhow, so I figured that the erotic revolution in film was going to be the next thing after the rock revolution. And so where I spent the 60s, ended up the 60s shooting Zappa for a couple of years, I figured I wound up suing him. In other words, we had agreed to make this film Uncle Me together. And I would keep shooting and kept saying, well, when are we going to start putting the film together? But he never wanted to finish it because he didn't have a concrete mind, like a beginning, a middle, and an end. And there was no real story. So by the second year, what happened is we went to Amsterdam. We played the Concert Cabal. And then I had this idea that wouldn't it be great to see the mothers running around in Holland with the wooden shoes and the windmills and all that stuff. Yeah, thinking like an ordinary creative person,
sure. Not
like Zappa. Anyhow, we went there and we were about to shoot, and Zappa got a call from Barbarella, Roger Vadim. What happened is he went to France to talk to Vadim about it and left me with the guys in Holland. And meanwhile, I had been deserting my TV commercial career to be traveling around. We played Albert Hall, and then we played Concert Cabal, and I was, doing a lot of filming of Zappa. It's part of my film. But no, there's 14 more hours. So anyhow, he left, and I said, what am I doing here with the guys? I can't direct them. There's no point. And so I hopped on a plane, and I went home. So that was the end of our relationship. Meanwhile, I'm sitting with 14 hours. I had spent of my own money about $11,000, not to mention a year and a half or over 13 months devoted to this filming, at home and everything. And so I said, if you're not going to finish it, I want to, get my money back. And so, because you're never going to finish this film. So we had that scene. and I wound up suing him. I got a lawyer, and I sued him for $50,000. You know, $11,000 spent and all the time I put in, and we actually came to a compromise of $25,000, in which he kept the 14 hours, and I was allowed to keep my film, which was supposed to be just for festival use, not to use it commercially. So after 40 years, now I'm selling my little film, which, you know, a lot of people are thanking me for because they never saw the footage. And I feel I'm doing his memory a service. I'm not ripping him off. I make the DVDs myself, you know. To me, it's a matter of my devotion to him and letting, sharing that stuff that we did together. And now, as I say, all those fans are saying, how do we get to 14 hours?